everybody. It is the first day of spring here in the Northern Hemisphere, and in Miami, Florida, as the case happens to be. And for those of you, particularly seasonal boaters on the East Coast of the U.S., and especially up in the Northeast, for those of you who have traditional boats, probably the first day of spring brings one word to mind, and it might be a dreaded one, which is varnish. Soon you'll be taking the cover off your boat and probably discovering a lot of work you're going to have to do to get her all ship shape for the summer. So anyway, I thought I'd do a short video here on my latest varnish discovery. And this product is actual varnish. And we might, just as an aside here, you might ask, why even bother with varnish? It's so much work. And really the only answer to that is nothing else looks like varnish. When you put it on a hardwood like mahogany, or on your spars on spruce or Douglas fir, other coatings such as Cetal are indeed far more durable and less work. But so far, none of them that I have seen still have just the aesthetic appeal of varnish. It really just brings the colors of wood alive, and it's really just a feast for the eyes. Well, a little less than a year ago, I started using this varnish, which is Duralux Marine Spar Varnish. And I have found so far, and I varnished my exterior brightwork with it before heading south last November to the Caribbean, and I've had to redo some of it. But I've found, compared to other varnishes, this stuff holds up at least as well, if not better. And the two other varnishes that I have experience with are Interlux Schooner Varnish and Epiphane's clear varnish. Now, as far as those went, Schooner Varnish was quite durable and gave a very nice finish. The only problem I found with Schooner Varnish was that if you bought a quart of it and you only partially used it, I found just no matter how careful you were about sealing the can back up, if you left it in the can for anything more than about 2 or 3 weeks after opening it, the varnish would develop all these little bits of dried varnish to the point where it just became useless. So I found with Schooner Varnish is whatever size container you got of it, you pretty much have to use it all at once, because once opened it does not store well in the can. Epiphanes, I did not have that problem too much, and Epiphanes is an excellent varnish. Really gives a beautiful finish, and it's fairly durable. So I should probably say that I've used Schooner Varnish and Epiphanes probably on and off both of those products for, I would say, 20 years now. Whereas I've only started using Duralux just last spring. So only for about a year. So I should point out just I haven't had as long a trial period with this varnish. But as I say, so far I found its performance is at least as good as those other premier marine varnishes. So the main reason I like Duralux, and I'll just kind of wind it up here, if I do just a quick survey on the internet of major chandleries, for a quart or 1,000 milliliters of Epiphane or Schooner, Defender has Epiphanes for $39.99 a quart, and has Schooner Varnish for $34.99 a quart. West Marine Epiphanes is $54.99 a quart for and $45.99 a quart for Schooner Varnish. Hamilton Marine only sells Schooner Varnish for $40.99 for a quart. And Jamestown Distributors, Epiphanes $37.99, and for Schooner Varnish $33.99. This Duralux, you can read the label here. I originally bought this at Patrick's Hardware in Hampton, Virginia. You can also buy this varnish at the Home Depot. Currently sells for $18.47. So basically it's half the price of the other varnishes. So in my experience so far, the product is just as good for half the price. I thought I also might talk about what my varnish routine is. I have a fair bit of external bright work on this boat. I do not maintain it to super yacht or classic yacht standards, but I try to keep things looking nice. As far as varnishing, I've always found that a bristle brush, a Badger style bristle brush, gives you the best finish. And while I'm varnishing, what I'll do is simply dip, after I'm done varnishing, is just dip the brush in solvent. Usually I use the Interlux 216 solvent and then put a rag over it so it doesn't evaporate so much, and just leave it in the solvent while I'm using it. Only when I'm done varnishing for a while will I pull it out of the solvent and wash it out with soap and water. And often the bristles will get kind of stiff because there's still varnish in there. But when I stick it back in the solvent, they'll loosen up again. For a cruising boat, I find generally what happens with exterior bright work is that it will not wear off evenly. Usually corners or anywhere where lines tend to rub and chafe, it'll wear the varnish down, and you'll get bare spots, and then you'll see the wood will go gray. If it's mahogany, usually it'll go gray on the bare spots. So my routine with that is I will simply sand down the bare spots until the wood, sand it down to the wood until I'm seeing the nice color of bare wood, and then I'll build up several coats. I'll start with a seal coat, which is roughly half varnish, half solvent, half turpentine, and then the next coat will be only lightly thin varnish, and then usually a couple more coats of just straight varnish. And so you build up the varnish on that one spot. And sometimes I'll just do that just periodically, basically just doing touch-up. And then about every 6 months or so, I'll give the whole thing a thorough sanding. Sometimes starting with 120 grit and then going to 220 grit sandpaper. Give it a thorough sanding, and then two full coats of varnish. So that's my routine, and generally that'll be good for 5 to 8 years, just doing that. And then usually at some point you're gonna have to strip it all back and start over, because it just the varnish just gets to be too much patchwork, and sometimes, especially around fittings, you kind of get these potholes where the varnish bubbled up. You scraped it off and you put varnish on there, but it didn't quite level out. So usually at some point you're gonna have to strip it all back and start over, which is a lot of work.